Well, I've had some amazing guests on the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast over the last year, but none as fabulous as my guest on today's show. I am introducing you to my beautiful mum. Her name is Tine, short for Christine, and she's been willing to come onto my podcast. She's going from top fan and my number one cheerleader to podcast guest as she is sharing her Hashimoto story. So, Mum, when she thinks about her health journey, we talk about as she looks back, she thinks it was probably, at least the scene was set back in her teenage years, but it was only 12 months ago that she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's after lots of encouragement from me to insist on thorough thyroid testing, including the antibodies tests. Mum, to her credit, has just taken on board and is working through it like we all do, the grieving process, the changing to diet and lifestyle, to, really addressing the mindset that is required to deal with a long-term chronic illness. But also with the hope and excitement that she's going to start feeling a whole lot better. So we talk in this conversation about her story, her symptoms, her diagnosis, how she's learning to manage her health. We talk about, some of the things that she noticed in me when I was a teenager and, through to when I was diagnosed when I was 23 and I was still living at home then. So we have a bit of a conversation about that from a mother's point of view. And we talk quite a bit about her dealing with her health issues. She's just turned 70, so within her generation, I guess. Anyway, I'll let you listen to the conversation and see what she has to say. But she's really being an amazing thyroid advocate amongst her own friends and helping raise awareness for thyroid health issues and health in general. And, that it's never too late to make some changes, that even though it's hard and even though, she's tackling things one thing at a time, which is perfectly fine, we talk about the challenges of having to make those sorts of changes, when you're a little bit older. I recorded it in person when Mum and Dad have just been staying for a little while. And so it's the first interview I have interviewed in person. And so the sound is a little bit different. In the end, I'm not going to share the video because I just didn't have a good setup for video and it hasn't really recorded very well. But the audio is great. I hope you really enjoy listening to this conversation with my beautiful mum. Welcome to Let's Talk Thyroid, where we explore different aspects of living a healthy thyroid lifestyle, positively and practically, to help you thrive and not just survive. Join me, Annabelle Bateman, your host, and let's talk thyroid. Before we get into the show today, I just want to say to those of you that are feeling overwhelmed and not too sure where to start with tackling your thyroid health from that diet and lifestyle point of view, then why not consider doing a strategy session with me? We can spend an hour together just trying to cut through all of the different information and work out what's the next best step for you, just to simplify it and get you started on a road to feeling better. So head to annabellebateman.com/strategy. I would love to do a session with you and just really help you get started. All right. Well, today on the show I've got Mum, so very special guest today. Welcome to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast, Mum.
Thank you, Annabelle. It's great to be here, and being up in Brisbane with you is very special, so it's lovely to be here. Hopefully I'll give you some information that might be useful to other people.
I'm sure you will. I say, I think Mum is like the biggest fan, so she's listened to, I think, all of the episodes or close to of the podcast. So you've listened to the podcast and you know that I will have said to all of my guests that come and share their story, there'll be someone that needs to hear your story because your story is different to my story, is different to everyone else on the show. We've got lots of similarities. But we're all different. So there'll be someone that needs to hear what you've got to say. I don't have any doubt about it.
Yes, and that's good. Yes, and particularly being an older person, or maybe I can have a different perspective to a younger person starting off on the journey, because really I'm starting off on the journey now rather than 50 years ago when I probably should have started.
Yeah, well, there we go. There's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think you're very brave for... I my show. And
well, I love your show. As you know, I am your number one fan, and I think you do an amazing job. So I'm happy to help you. Anywhere I can help, I will. Because you help me, so I'll help you. But certainly, no, it's good fun to be up here with you.
Yeah, that's good. I reckon this is probably the first podcast you've ever been on. Is that right?
True.
Yeah, see, that's not bad. The 70s, you know. See,
that's it.
They say that when I interviewed Dr. Dion, the neurologist, a little while ago, he said it's really important as we age to do different things and have different experiences because that's what keeps our neurons firing in different ways. So you can add podcast guest as to your CV.
On my CV.
Yeah.
When I get my next job.
Yeah, that's right. Who knows? You could be this internet podcast sensation.
You never know. That's exactly right.
So tell us a little bit about your health history. I mean, we'll get to the thyroid stuff because that is more recent. And I know I've mentioned you on the show before because in the context of my thyroid health, but give us a bit of as you look back over your health history, what is it that stands out to you that that you've noticed?
Well, now that I'm aware of inflammatory diseases, I think way back when I was probably a teenager and I had irregular periods and, I had hormonal problems even then. And now I'm reflecting back, and then I developed endometriosis. I have had a hearing problem for some time that is called otosclerosis, which is a fixation of the stapes bone in the middle ear. So whether that comes under inflammatory, but it's got the osis on the end, not the itis. But I think possibly over many years I've probably had inflammatory problems, but not relating them at all to thyroid.
Yeah.
And, I've had the tonsils and adenoids and the childhood, diseases, etc. But I think I probably have had thyroid problems or related since I was a teenager. But, of course, having only been diagnosed recently, I've been living with the effects of not following the right protocol.
Well, not knowing that you've needed to deal with that, and so therefore, and maybe not knowing that you could be feeling different.
That's right,
and I just felt that same way for.
That's right, exactly. I have felt that way and I think in recent times certain symptoms have become very dominant in my life that are causing me a lot of angst, and I think when I realised that they are symptoms of thyroid malfunction, I think that's what sent me off. Well, you sent me off to have the thyroid antibodies tested because I've had thyroid tests.
I'm very bossy, aren't I? I'm a bossy daughter. That's the thyroid personality, isn't it?
Yeah. But basically, 12 months ago when Annabelle was doing the Thyroid Awareness Month and putting up a lot of the symptoms of thyroid dysfunction, I fit the bill with a lot of the things, particularly the gut issues, the insomnia, and insomnia, gut issues, and joint pain. Right. Joint pain's a real, that's a big issue because I am riddled with arthritis. So that's what made me look at it thinking, I've got to do something about this because I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
And
so then you went and got tested and made sure that, or insisted that they test the thyroid antibodies.
Yes.
And was that difficult? Like, did you have any, when you said, I really want them tested, was there any problem with that? Like, did the doctor resist that at all or not?
No, because I was fairly persistent about it or insistent about it. But I don't think she probably would have ordered it. Well, I've had thyroid tests before and nobody's ever ordered that. Yeah. And I've obviously been within the whatever was a normal range at the time and they didn't do anything with it. So, yes, I was insistent, but she happily wrote it on the form.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, yes. So that was good.
Yeah, and so then that came back. You had elevated thyroid antibodies.
Yep.
Welcome to Hashimoto's.
Welcome to Hashimoto's. Yes.
And so, so you're welcome to the club.
Thank you. Yes, it's not a club I'd probably choose to belong to.
No,
but I'm part of it now, and I'm just trying to, learn to live with it and try to make my life a whole lot better by using some of the gluten-free and lots of other things that I've been suggested to do. So it's starting to work.
Yeah. So really when you think, gosh, you probably lived the bulk of your life with, well, at least elements of that perfect storm being created to set you up to have problems with your thyroid. So we're going to come back to you. So I was diagnosed when I was 23.
Yes.
And you're a nurse, so you were the one that picked it up really in the first place for me.
Yes.
So I thought this was an interesting maybe question to ask was, I mean, can you remember before I was diagnosed, what you observed as my mum? I was still living at home then.
Yes,
so
yes. Yeah. Probably there's quite a bit of guilt associated to this because I am a trained nurse. I should have possibly picked up symptoms that you had much younger than, your late teens. You always had trouble with weight gain and then multiple diets and different regimes we've tried over the years to help you to lose that weight, which was unsuccessful. Then when you were doing the HSC, you had huge problems with hair loss and, I put it down to stress. I didn't put it down to the fact
I would have been stressed.
I mean, you would have been stressed.
But that's not an unfair.
But at the time, time I remember people were saying, don't be surprised, people with stress often have hair loss. And you had very thick hair and it suddenly became very thin.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay. Probably that and the weight rate. The trouble to lose weight were probably the two things. And then once you got to university and when you were saying, you're having trouble lifting your arms, it was right at a crisis point. I think the penny dropped and I'm thinking thyroid.
Yeah.
But there was no history of thyroid in your family,
that's
so
right.
I didn't think that would be an issue.
And I mean, look, even with your nursing background, it's not like you were a thyroid nurse,
No, but I mean, we studied all of that and, the signs and symptoms. But I think also going back 50 years, there wasn't as much.
50.
For me, even when I was nursing, I meant 50 years ago when I was nursing, they didn't know nearly as much about thyroid and how to treat it.
And it's
properly.
unusual still in a teenager. Like now, it's not. Yeah. It's much less common.
Yes,
more women are diagnosed when they're either connected with pregnancy or perimenopause, more menopausal in those hormonal shifts. So it's still not super common for teenagers.
That's true. But also, the education I had doing my training probably was not nothing like we know today. Yeah. And so I probably took the penny dropped a bit late, but it did drop. So that was another.
Yeah, but I remember you saying, I think it's your thyroid, and going off to the doctor specifically to have my thyroid tested. So it wasn't then that we didn't go then to the doctor and say, I don't know what's wrong. No. And I didn't take lots of time then to be diagnosed. It was you saying, I think it's your thyroid. You need to go to the doctor, get your thyroid tested.
Yep.
Oh, hello. How are you still alive?
That's yes.
So I think
that's good. Well,
I'm very grateful. I don't blame you.
No, I know you don't. But I probably could have picked it up earlier if I'd been thinking along the right lines. But I didn't. So that's
I don't think. Yeah.
That's life.
Let that go.
Let that go.
I'm not worried.
That's fine.
What's been and gone. But it's just interesting to see because I think knowing what we know and now seeing it in our own family, there are probably people who are listening that have children, teenagers like me. Like the more I read, I think, oh my gosh, having 3 boys, it's different, but it's not like men can't have Hashimoto's. They can. It's less common, but it's
much
not
less common.
Yeah. Yes. But I sort of think, should I get them tested? I mean, at the moment, there's no obvious signs to me, but I do think, if you're listening and you've got, know that I guess at least significant hormonal shifts are common triggers, one of the many, but so I look back and I think for me it was probably triggered around that puberty age.
Yes.
And so if you've got kids and daughters, probably for you too. So if you've got daughters, particularly in that age group, then and you've got a thyroid issue, then at least be alert that there are those genetic factors, and because I mean, I know there are women in, the Let's Talk Thyroid, my Facebook group, that are there because they have teenage daughters with thyroid issues.
Not surprising, is it?
No, and not always that they've got it too, but, they may. So that's so just knowing that there is that family, that genetic connection, I think is important.
Oh, I think it is. And your sister's been tested, my sister's been tested, and neither of them at this stage have it. But at least they're aware that, there's a possibility down the track even. It's not because they don't have it now doesn't mean they won't develop.
Yeah, that's right. Later. Something could trigger, it down the track.
Yes. But at this stage, it's just you and I.
We're in good company.
We are. And I'm very fortunate that you have done so much research that I can hop on the back of. It's it's made it a much easier journey so far for me. Having had 20 years experience and the research, the reading, and the educating you do that has made it such an easier ride for me. So I thank you because you do a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And in educating people, like me, even though I might be a trained nurse, I think we're all learning all the time. And I think it's wonderful, the amount of information that's out there. I think you're wonderful.
Thanks. You're making me cry now.
Well, I do. I just think we're blessed. I'm blessed that Annabelle does put so much time and effort, and her big thing in life is to help people and educate. And I think that's fantastic because it does. I suppose I'm a bit lazy that I haven't read as much.
I don't know any. Lazy is not one word I would use to describe you, no.
I'm not lazy in that sense, but I haven't done, because Annabelle's done so much research, I have it at my fingertips, and it makes the journey that much easier having that information at hand. Yeah. It certainly does. So I think that's great.
Well, thanks, Mum. And I think that's true. I mean, I've learnt from people too. I mean, I suppose that's where I've probably learnt a lot from the people that I, follow on social media or read their books or listen to their things, do their courses.
Yes.
So we're all learn from each other. And I suppose that's part of the purpose of the podcast, and so much of what I'm trying to do in this thyroid space is raise awareness because so many people don't know still.
That's right.
And we were having this conversation the other day. You were saying, well, now that you're alert to it, you kind of look around and sort of think you can kind of spot. I mean, maybe there's a danger and you just see thyroid everywhere and you think everyone's got a thyroid problem. I could probably be guilty of that. But you were saying, you look around at some women in your age group who
don't want to know about it. So many of them are coming across, or they've said, oh, yes, I pop a pill, or I've had my thyroid out, or I've got those symptoms because I belong to a few groups and we have morning teas together and I do the gluten-free and try to educate them. And a lot of them are saying, oh, I suppose I should be eating like this. And saying, well, maybe you should.
Maybe you should. Go and listen to the podcast.
When you get to 70 and you're set in your ways a little bit and you're enjoying the life you're having, enjoying the food you're eating and the wine you're drinking, etc., it makes it very hard to change that, the way of thinking. It's only if you feel sick enough, I think, and feeling unwell, that you're prepared to go that extra mile and put the effort in. I think that's what's made a big difference to me is the fact that I have felt pretty lousy. And, I know going gluten-free has made a huge difference to me without anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking medication at this stage. Maybe I should be or will be later, but I think at this stage,
You're managing.
I'm managing. I'm not thriving yet, but I'm managing.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the process. It is a process.
It is. And that's the hardest thing is the mindset, getting it into your head that this is going to be good for you, not, oh, dear, this is, another thing I've got to cope with, or this is just a quick fix and when it's done I'll go back. That's the hardest thing for me. I'm an all or nothing sort of a girl, and finding, deciding that that's going to be the rest of my life if I want to stay healthy and well or get better.
Yeah.
That's what I have the biggest problem is getting it into my head and getting my brain around it all.
Well, it's a grieving process.
It is, totally. Yes, I'm grieving for all the sugar I can't have, all those things.
Well, maybe it's like a continual grieving. Like you get to terms with one thing and then...
Yeah.
And I think it is like that because, I even think for me, I've been doing it a lot longer and, I can't...
You've come to grips with it.
I have. Well, about sooner in chronological time, but maybe not in terms of... it took me years to come to terms with that, with the gluten-free. And really, whilst I've dabbled in, say, the dairy-free, it's really probably been the last year or so that I've become much stricter with the dairy, and that has its own little grieving process. So I think it's a constant...
It is a constant
grief.
Yeah, but then at the end of it, you do feel so much better. I know when I go on Annabelle's 30-day challenges, I feel so much better during and after it until I get back and do the wrong thing again and get back into food I shouldn't be having or whatever, and then the symptoms return. So I know that ultimately I'll feel a whole lot better when I get my head around the whole situation. But, one thing at a time. I'm just trying to learn one thing at a time. And I think if I can do it that way, my personality will cope with that probably better.
Yeah. Well, talking personality, you've heard me talk about, what I think is maybe a thyroid personality.
Yep.
And you've had the sneak peek read of what I've written of my book so far.
That's
so you know more about the thyroid personality than...
Yes. Well, I think...
So what do you... do you see that you fit within that kind of driven type A, like to be in control kind of...
Totally. Yes. I'm probably not the research bit that you're very... adamant and you do it naturally. I don't probably do that so much, but certainly, that the driven and, focus. Once you can get focused, you're right. But, and I think, maybe the responsibility, that eldest child syndrome thing that we both have, I think that plays a part. It's that responsibility, taking control, helping, that type of personality, I think. Yes, and I've read a little bit about, personality type thyroid people, and, I think I certainly fit the bill.
Yeah. So we were talking about this just earlier today. We probably could have recorded this podcast multiple times in the last few days because we've had all these conversations like, we should have saved that for the podcast.
That's right.
Anyway, that's all right.
Remember what we said.
That's all right. But today, so Mum's just been to see my friend Sharon, one of my lovely naturopath friends, and... There was a few things that, you have been having that she's saying maybe you shouldn't be. And we were talking on the way home and you said you tend to be this all or nothing. And I said, well, why don't you just go, I think you said hell for leather. Is that what you said? So we'll just go hell for leather on one aspect of that rather than thinking you've got to
do it all
at once, but use that element of your personality.
Yep.
That's, focused and all or nothing, but on one aspect and just go all in on one aspect.
Yep.
And then, then over time.
Yes, do the others.
Yeah, so I think that's using that personality.
And I think that will probably work best for me. And I think, now that I've been told grains are no good for me and I love gluten-free bread, etc., but I feel that my head and my can cope with the grains bit, the sugar and the alcohol and other things down the track. Well, I look at those down the track. But at the moment, gluten-free, grain-free will keep me on the straight and narrow, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully it gets you feeling better. And,
well, of course.
And preventing, further damage to your thyroid. And,
exactly. Yes. So putting me in a, certainly a better or optimum health level. And I'm looking forward to that because I do suffer from, quite a few symptoms that I still have. So going further down the track with the grain, I think will certainly eliminate some of those gut issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then
probably the foggy brain too.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. That's the whole grain-brain connection.
Yes.
So, I think, and the sugar.
Yeah.
And we're not going to touch wine. I know I value my life.
Yes, that's right. We won't do the sugar and the alcohol.
Well, we'll just deal with that down the track. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So is there, what do I want to ask? Because I suppose I want to go back to what you were saying about trying to deal with these changes when you're a bit older and you're in a different generation, in a generation of people who are maybe more, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, but a bit more mainstream Western medical. If the doctor just says take a pill, there's nothing else to do about it, then that's right.
Yep.
And maybe not so open to natural things.
Totally.
Yeah. And so how's that? Yeah. So,
and I think having had a medical background, and in the days when, I was nursing, the nurses were, 10 feet behind the doctor walking along the wards doing they were God on, up on the pedestal, and you didn't ever argue with the doctor. He said jump, you'd say how high. If you didn't, you were in big trouble. So I think our generation certainly is, yes, pop a pill and it'll be okay. And it's only, and I'm finding that with some of my friends today. I just, some of them aren't at all interested in learning about alternate ways to better their health other than just pop a pill.
Yeah.
And that's a manufactured pill, not a healthy
not a supplement,
type of supplement or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yes, and a lot of them know they have health issues that could be remedied, but they're just not prepared to change. I think that's a generational age
Or
thing.
maybe too, they're not as likely to go digging into Google and investigating too. So they're a bit more reliant still on what they're told by the health professional.
Oh, totally.
And less likely to go Googling.
Yes.
Do you think that would be...
because
that's a lot of it, self-education. I think when I was diagnosed it gets longer every time I say 23, 24 years ago. The internet had only just started to exist, so there certainly wasn't the same access to information, but I suppose I've grown up with the internet and, now we all do Google, and I think that's empowered many frustrated thyroid patients, because at least now we've got access to, it can be overwhelming and confusing, but at least there is access to information and to people saying, no, there are things you can do that can make yourself feel better, whereas your generation may be less likely to start Googling. Is that fair?
Yes, I think people will Google common symptoms or whatever to ask Dr. Google, what they might have, but I don't think it'd go as deep as looking for the thyroid problem. They may not even know that exists.
Yeah.
So, yes, and a lot of them are they've got to my age, which is 70 odd, and they don't want to change. Doesn't matter whether it kills them or not. They're prepared to still, have all the things that they like to eat and drink because they like it, and they're not prepared to change. So it's a mindset.
Yeah. But you are.
Well, I am.
So what's the difference, do you think?
Well, you make a big difference because of the way you look at your thyroid problem and the way that you've approached it. But I've always been interested in alternative medicine. Way back I was seeing chiropractors, I was seeing naturopaths, and every GP I've been to in the last probably 30-odd years, I've said to them, if you're not interested in me looking at alternate, ways of treating a disease if I can, I'm not interested in staying with you. So I've made sure the GP I've had has been someone that's happy to refer me on if I want to be referred on.
Yeah. So you've learned to advocate for yourself.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, I've had to.
So you're not the nurse just jumping high anymore.
No.
So you've learned to stand up for yourself.
Yes. However, if I didn't have the likes of you in my life, who's very inquisitive and who likes to read and learn, I may not have been quite as investigative about different diseases. However, I have always enjoyed the idea that if you can treat something naturally, I'd much prefer to do that. But that's not always common amongst nurses and doctors and, the Western style.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more so because I think as a global society, the more chronic health issues that exist that that are that have lifestyle factors at play.
Yeah.
So I think, from my completely non-medical self, over the next 20, 30 years, there'll be a big shift towards understanding the body as a whole and not just as a thyroid and a gut and a brain, but as a whole. I think there will be a shift.
I think there is a shift.
Well, there is a shift.
I think it's a gradual shift. Yes, but I think with the next generations coming along with so much information at their fingertips, they're going to question a whole lot more. Yeah. We didn't have that information to question or to look into. So I think definitely there's a whole lot more, people now looking outside the square, the narrow square. Yeah.
But if there are people listening that maybe are, more in your age group that, still young with lots of
young
life to live and wanting to live it well, but maybe feeling a bit maybe either overwhelmed or don't really know that they should, or what would you say to them?
I think I would say to them to get the practitioners, health practitioners around you that are going to help you. Like you've suggested, if you're going on this journey, you need to have, an integrative doctor who's prepared to go along the journey with you, whether it's a naturopath, a chiropractor. I think if you've got a support team around you, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. And it helps the mindset as well, because if you've got other people thinking along the same lines as you, it makes it much easier to adapt to change. Yeah. Yeah. I would suggest getting the right people around you, or be prepared to listen to other alternatives as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. Because, I guess one of the other things we talked about over the last couple of days is that's part of being in a different stage of life to where I'm at. Like I've still got 3 teenage boys at home and, it's very different stage to being, older and it's just you and dad and you're very social. You're... just for anyone listening, Mum's far more social than probably most people, and certainly more than me. Yeah. And you're in a different stage of life where you do, you are with friends all the time and you're going here and you're in different clubs and you're out for dinner and you're meeting for coffee and you're going to each other's house for dinner. Yes. For us, that's not as frequent because different stage of life.
Yes.
Totally. So, and I know that is one of the challenges.
Yeah. It's an ongoing challenge, and I think you've got to pick your battles a little bit as well. But certainly I've educated a lot of my friends into the way I eat, and a lot of them, they're good friends, they'll assist you doing that, and they do. I think I've, along the way, am helping quite a few other people to realise that, there are other ways to eat, and I'm happy to offer to take a dessert, for example, if we're going somewhere for dinner. Yeah. Then I know that I can eat it. I love desserts and sweet things, but I know I can make a really delicious, dairy-free, wheat-free, whatever, grain-free dessert to take that everyone will enjoy. Yeah. If I have a party, and we had a farewell party when we moved from the farm into town, and I did a dessert bar.
And, it looked amazing.
And
incredible.
There was only one thing on that dessert bar that wasn't gluten-free. Yeah. So it made it, and people realise that there's yummy food you can have if you make the effort.
Just a bit.
If you make the effort to try a few new recipes and try things differently. And because I love cooking, I need to have that challenge there to make it work for me. Yeah. Because I love to entertain, I love to cook, I like anything to do with that. That's my go-to place, if I want to relax, is into the kitchen. So if I can experiment with different recipes, then take them to other people to try, and they all go, oh, yum, can I have that recipe? And they discover it's, gluten-free, dairy-free, I'm a happy camper. So, and then they'll cook it for me if I'm going to them. So it works. Look, I think it's
so you're doing... you're the thyroid awareness advocate for Orange.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yes, in my age group.
In your circle.
Yes,
but in the end, all we can do is influence the people around us. That's
right. Exactly. I think that's, yes. And if you want to have a good fun time and enjoy, being with friends and having good food and company, I think if you can enjoy the food you're eating and not feel either guilty or feel you have to eat it because someone's cooked it, even though it's something you can't eat, it makes it a little bit harder to be out there into, having a good social life.
Yeah.
So
you've been so I know one of the things that I talk about often is that one of my tips for going gluten-free, or going anything free really, is to tell people.
Yes.
Because and the more you tell people, the more they know. Well, Tine's gluten-free, Annabelle's gluten-free, whatever.
Yeah.
Then it's not, then you're not, it makes it easier when other people know.
Yes, and I've got to the stage with some of my friends that we see on a fairly regular basis, they'll ring me and say, this is what I'm thinking we'll have for dinner, can you eat it? And I'll say yes, or if it's got garlic in it, I'll say I can't do garlic. And gluten, they're the two main big problems for me, and they'll work around it. So I'm very fortunate. I think if your friends are good friends, they'll work it for you.
Yeah.
And it's educating people in one form or another. And having reached 70 and having to change my life, especially a lot of the foods in my life, that's a big challenge to me. And I'm only just on the journey. I haven't got there completely. I have with gluten, but with the others.
You came so far. It took you a long time to get there with gluten, and now you have. So that's amazing. I think you've done think about all the. Maybe that was before you knew you had Hashimoto's too, but but we've talked about that on and off for years, and and now that's like it's non-negotiable. It's normal. So that's where I think it does.
Yes, and I think it takes time.
That it takes time.
Yes, and I think we've just got to not beat ourselves up about it. If we fall off the perch here and there and pick ourselves up and start again, that's okay. We're human, we're not super.
No, we're not.
Super.
We like to think we should be perfect though, don't we?
Yeah, of course we do. But I think I'm learning that don't beat myself up if I slip off the rails a bit now and again and then get back on. So I think that's important.
Yeah, it is. And that sort of that beating yourself up and that being very hard on yourself, I think is very much part of that thyroid personality.
Yes.
And not being able to rest and slow down and de-stress.
Yes.
So how would you, I know that's
a challenge.
I know that it is, and it's a challenge for me too. But we're I'm a little bit different. But so, what have you? Do you see that is something that you're wanting to work on, or what have you done around that? And I know it's not. That's a work in progress.
Yes, I do need to slow down, and I find that hard because it's not in my personality. I do go like a bull at a gate at most things, and I go. Yes, I am probably running all the time rather than slowing down. But I'm starting now. We've moved into town, into a smaller unit, into a small house that in comparison where we were, I've had to downsize everything. However, I've still kept all my watercolour paints from years gone by, and I've now got I've got them out, and I've started using, started to make some little gift tags and that type of thing with, using the watercolours.
Yeah.
And my best friend's a wonderful watercolourist, and she encourages me all the time to get the paints out because they are a wonderful therapy. Because you're thinking about that the whole time you're doing it and not stressing about anything. You might be stressing about remembering how to do all the techniques, but I now have learned YouTube's got lots of different, I can I love doing watercolour flowers. So there's 500 watercolour flower YouTube things I can look at, which I do.
Yeah.
And I've just started. So I'm starting, and I can now sit down and read a book for some time, not a huge amount of time, but rather than just going to bed and reading. So I am consciously trying to slow down a little bit. And I think your body tells you it's going to slow down when it gets to this age.
Yeah.
You just can't physically be quite as active as you were, and particularly as I have got arthritis in about every part of my body, that it does impact on your lifestyle and the way you move or slow down or whatever. And I found doing hydrotherapy as opposed to land gym work's been good for me because I love being in the water, and it's much kinder on my joints and it's fitness and, that type of thing. So I'm trying to learn to slow down, but that is probably one of my big issues.
It's finding ways that you can slow down and still feel productive.
Yes, I think that's right.
And give yourself permission to do that.
That's right. And I think I'm at the stage of life I don't want to gather lots of artworks around the walls that I might paint, that I might think I could frame, because I don't need that. But if I've got a purpose with my art to make them into little gift tags or note cards and give them to people, I love doing that. And the same with anything to do with craft and whatever. If it's something I can make and give and it doesn't sit in my cupboard, I'm much more likely to do it. And I think, I do love doing things with my hands. So,
well, gosh, I mean, you used to do, you're very creative, so you've done so much.
Yeah. I find
sewing and craft and all of that sort of
I mean, some things I can't do so much, like embroidery now because of the arthritis and whatever, but, there are other things I'm learning to do instead. And I don't have the same need to do the embroidery now. There are not too many babies, needing rub roses on singlets, etc., because they're not in vogue anymore. So,
but I'm saying, I wonder if over the years there's some of the things that, because you enjoyed them, maybe that was your downtime.
Oh, it was, definitely.
Throughout your
It was either the sewing machine or the kitchen have always been my downtime places to go. If I want to relax, I'll go into the kitchen, or I'd sit at the sewing machine or sit doing some embroidery. So I still do sit at the sewing machine occasionally to make things like, things for my home, but the kitchen is probably my best go-to place. So now I'm learning to create different types of recipes.
Yeah, well, you're amazing. Lee always says you still don't cook like your mother.
I love him.
And so, people say, ask me about my cooking. Well, I got that from you,
Well, thank you. I
love
do love
cooking. You're a very creative cook and,
well, that's my go-to place. Yeah, we all have a go-to place.
Yeah, so as Sharon said to me all those years ago, well, if anyone can make those sort of dietary restrictions palatable and enjoyable, well, gosh, if I can, you can, because you're far better cook than me. So
well, no, I'm probably not as inventive, I think. And I do like, having a challenge and creating things that I like to eat that I'm allowed to now eat differently to, using lots of sugar and flour and whatever, as I've done in years gone by with, sweet food. Now I'm using, a lot of almond meal and maple syrup and different, substitutes. And if I can create that into something that's delicious, I feel great.
Yeah.
And I don't feel cheated.
Yeah, so it's that definitely, when you feel like you're not missing out.
That's right.
That's definitely a big thing.
Yeah. And as you get older, it's hard, I think that's even more so because you're so used to having, a yummy dessert or whatever, that you suddenly, at this age, have to look at everything and get your head around things differently. I think it's good if you can find something and you go, oh, that worked. That was good. I'll try that again.
Yeah, it's good.
So that's all good.
Yeah. Well, Mum, is there anything I haven't asked you that you think I need to know?
I don't know.
Do you want to look at your notes?
I can have a look at my notes. What did I do?
Well, we covered.
Well, I think the advice, was that you one stage you said, what advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah.
And my journey's only, the last 12 months.
Yeah, so
really.
I think you've done amazing in 12 months.
And I've got down here, it's a continuing journey, which I think I've been, get the mindset right. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I'm learning not to beat myself up if I go off the rails. And the other thing was educating yourself. And I've been lucky because I have you as well with all that wealth of knowledge that I can draw on. So I think, yes, educate yourself, listen to Annabelle's podcasts, read all the books that you can, and, at the time. And I think that's, for me, that's the way it works for me.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
So far.
I'm kind of, they're constantly educating myself. And I think what's interesting is that at different stages, because this is lifelong, it's not, at different parts in that journey, you can read the same book or the same article or listen to a podcast interview or whatever, and you just different things will stand out because of where you're at in that path, and that's great. So I think that's a constant education, and I think then I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. I'm constantly like that, or you're seeing different connections that I hadn't seen before. And
well, I'm enjoying that book. Your favourite.
Dr. Karatsian.
Dr. Karatsian, I'm enjoying that book at the moment. And as a nurse, it's got all the medical reasons and, educating you as to why the thyroid's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
And that's making a big impact on me. I'm only sort of halfway through the book, but I'm enjoying that because he does do it. It's complex, but you can skip over some of the really complex things and take out of it what you want or what it leaves you with. The result of that makes it, to me, that's great. And you've got that book to go back to if you need to reinforce it or get a little bit more, get up and go to keep going, I think. I think that's probably right. I think most of the stuff we've covered that you were asking me to think about. Yeah,
well, I mean, they're the same questions that I ask pretty much, similar sort of questions, because I think this is just about sharing stories and raising awareness, and I think, I'm really grateful that you and, the other people on the show that have been prepared, because it is your health and it's your it's personal, and it takes courage, and it's because it's not resolved. It's not in the past. It is ongoing. It's you never really get there, and I think there's that quest for. Well, I've had this certainly for kind of health perfection. I mean, I think you said the other day, but I'm only I haven't really solved everything, or something. I don't think you quite said it that way, but that's the point. Is that I think we don't, and to have someone on, you've only been diagnosed 12 months. It's not like you've got 20 years of dealing with this experience. I think that's great, because there are other people listening that are still figuring out, even if they've got a thyroid problem or have been recently diagnosed, and it all seems very hard. So I think it is great.
But I am very fortunate that you've had that 20 years of experience, and I can just delve into all of that and I've been watching your journey the whole time. So I've become very aware a long time ago now about thyroid issues, but was just surprised that I was never diagnosed because they didn't do the right tests. And I'm sure if they had, my life, health issues could be very different today. But, I've got to live with what I've got and try and improve the situation. So now that I'm on that journey with lots of help, I think you can do it. And if we do fail now and again, well, we do, and we just keep going.
And it's not probably failing; it's just learning experiences, and
that's right. If we're just being human and you want to have that, piece of chocolate you shouldn't have, well, so be it.
Yeah, so be it. Well done. Well, well, thank you, Mum.
That's my pleasure.
You're amazing.
I love you. I love you
too. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and share it with others that you know with thyroid problems. Let's get the message out there. If you'd like to connect with me further, the best place to do that is via my website, annabellebateman.com. From there, you'll be able to join my Facebook group, book a strategy session with me, download my freebie, and access any show notes for this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
The information presented and discussed in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and should not be used as a substitute for proper advice from a qualified professional.